It's looking like Joe Biden is really about to lose to Donald Trump. And that is freaking insane to me because Donald Trump has been charged with multiple felonies. I don't know if the public is aware of that. I would think that they are, but maybe it hasn't really sank in yet. But it is looking like that in the polls. Now, when you really go into it and look at why that could possibly be the case, we start to see some real facts and figures as to why that is. And the number one thing that Joe Biden is taking an L on is the economy. He's taking an L on the economy. And if you look at the swing states, which is the states that actually will are in play, I should say, for the election, the states that are in play and can be swayed either to Donald Trump or Joe Biden, they're leaning towards Trump, and the gap keeps getting wider. It's like every time I check it, it's wider than it was before. And I was looking online at different articles, and the major reason why they were saying that that's the case is because of the economy, which makes sense why people would interpret that to be the case. The number one thing that really messed Joe Biden up was inflation. Like, prices increased a lot since Joe Biden became president. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but that's not the only thing that's holding Joe Biden back in this election. So people will judge a president because everything that happens in the economy underneath the president, the people will probably blame on the president, especially when it's time to elect. So the other thing that's messing him up is his age. And it's not even really the fact that he is his age, because Trump is like just 3 years younger than them. Both of them are very old. I think Trump is 78. Joe Biden just turned 81. What really is messing Joe Biden up is that he looks and acts his age. Every time I see Trump on a major platform, dude is caked with makeup. That's why he appears to be orange. Joe Biden is like very pale. He almost looks sick. And there's so many videos that you can see of Joe Biden falling, bumbling around where he doesn't make sense. And what I see, like a lot of media that leans to the left, like center left and left media trying to do now, is trying to show like the areas where Trump's age is showing. And I looked at the videos and they don't compare. Now, me personally, I'm going to be voting for Joe Biden coming up. But I do have to point out that that is going to be a major handicap for him coming into an election. Do I think that it should be? Well, I think that all of our presidents should be mentally competent. Ideally, that should be the case. But would I take a older and kind of not all the way with it all the time president who I agree with more over one who's with it more that I absolutely disagree with? Absolutely. Who wouldn't? But in this case, most people are judged based off of what their pockets are like and their interpretation of the president. And I don't think that Joe Biden's constant issues on stage with like gazing off and falling and appearing to be lost and feeble-minded, I don't think that it goes over well with the general public. So those are the two things that are messing him up. The third thing that I think is messing him up, but not as much, is also foreign policy. And that one's a little bit more complicated because it's not like Joe Biden got us into these issues like he didn't. If anything, Joe Biden has gotten out of a lot of things. He got out of Afghanistan, which I really like that. But the Russia just randomly decides to invade Ukraine. You got the issue that's happening in Israel right now, just happens on a random October weekend when everyone's chilling. And what else do you have going on? You got Now people are talking about China and Taiwan. So it's like a lot happening right now. And I don't think that it favors well for Joe Biden, because people are wondering like, hey, what's going on? You're president. Now, like I said, the top of that list is the economy. It's the economy. And I don't know why, but I don't know why Democrats don't change their game plan, because literally every election, I think since I've been born, when it comes to the economy, the Republicans are always viewed more favorably than the Democrats. Like, the Democrats, when it comes to social and cultural issues, crush the Republicans. If we look at the midterms, if we look at what happened this year with the elections that happened, every time that it comes down to social and cultural issues, the Democrats smash the Republicans. But in this metric here with the economy, it's the Republicans who always gain the upper hand over the Democrats. So I think that the Democrats really need to take a look at how they manage an economy. Now, inflation, let's talk about it. Because what is Joe Biden's response? Joe Biden says that under my presidency, inflation has come down. Is that true? Absolutely. Now, at first, it shot up, then it came down. But here's the thing about inflation. Inflation just means, right? Price inflation just means the increase, the percentage of the increase in prices. So let's say that when Joe Biden came in, inflation was up and it was at like 13%. So prices are going up 13%. Now let's say that 4 months from then, prices, the next period comes out, the next statistics come out, and they say, oh, prices only went up 10% from the first period to this period. Okay, so inflation is coming down. The next period, oh, it only went up 6%. And then the last period, oh, it's back to normal. It's at like 2%. Well, over that entire time, the price of those, whatever it was, whether it was eggs or whatever, the price of that just increased 13%, then 10%, then 6%, and now it's not increasing like crazy anymore. But if you look at the prior year compared to this year, the prices have increased by a lot. So that's why whenever the media is saying like, oh, well, inflation is coming down, that is true. And they're saying that they don't understand why people perceive the economy to be bad. It's because the prices have still gone up. Now, if we look at wages, and I did go on PolitiFact to make sure that what I'm saying is the truth, wages went up as well. But overall, inflation outpaced wages overall. Okay? As a whole, the speed which prices went up was faster than the speed which people's wages went up. That is just now starting to change the last time I looked, but the damage has already been done. So that means wages now have to catch up with inflation. That means that the average person is probably thinking to themselves, my dollar went further when Donald Trump was president compared to when Joe Biden is president. How come all of a sudden all the prices started increasing? So now we're about to get into that. I did get this fact check too. So I'm telling you something that I read from a very, very well fact check source, PolitiFact. Economists agree on this. Generally speaking, economists agree that the cause of inflation was a mix of things. It was a mix of the fact that in 2020, we had a lockdown. So prices went down, demand was lower. We had a lockdown. The economy was basically at a standstill. Then when we lifted the lockdown, all of a sudden prices shoot up because demand shoots up. But since there was a lockdown, a lot of supply chains like Amazon, like Walmart, where they get their goods from, where they get the labor for the goods from, all of that was still trying to get back in whack. So Trump, it was hard to keep up with the demand, so that drives prices up. Another thing that they say caused inflation was government spending during the time. Now, we know that if the government spends a deficit, in other words, if it spends out more than it takes in, what happens is is that now that money has to come from somewhere, right? Because the government is going into debt. So it usually borrows. It borrows from the public, like stock traders, all of that. It borrows in the form of bonds, basically handing out notes to investors that says, hey, if you give us this money right now, we promise to pay you back with interest, right? Also, the Federal Reserve, which is basically like the federal bank, but it operates independently. The Federal Reserve during that time was printing a lot of money. I think I read a stat that there was more money printed during that time than like World War II. It might have said all of the wars combined. You got to remember, there was a lot of money that was spent during that time. Now, here's the part that gets me. Here's the part that gets me. Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump, he contributed to inflation too, if not more than Joe Biden. Donald Trump signed $1 trillion bill during that time. $1 trillion bill. Now, if you are a conservative, I talk in good faith. That is definitely what happened. And if you believe that government spending contributed to inflation, then you have to be able to say with some honesty and integrity that Trump contributed to inflation. Anything else would be not telling the truth. All right? So then Biden comes in there and Biden decides to spend too. And I think Biden spent less than Trump.